Exodus 9 through 11, the Lord sent pestilence upon the livestock of the Egyptians, and they died, but the livestock of the Hebrews were not affected. Note that the Egyptians worshipped a cow-headed goddess. Boils breaking out in sores came upon the Egyptians, including the sorcerers. God said he could have wiped out the Egyptians, but he hadn't because he was showing his power through all these signs. God sent hail and fire. Some Egyptians began to fear the word of the Lord. Pharaoh said again he would let them go, but reneged again. God said the Israelites would be able to tell their children how he made a mockery of the Egyptians. Pharaoh's servants began to question him. Are you hanging around in a crowd that does not reverence God? Are you questioning that? God sent locusts that consumed every green thing. Pharaoh said he'd let only the men go, but that was not acceptable. God sent darkness that covered the land for 3 days. Pharaoh said he'd let them go without livestock, but that was unacceptable. God called Israel to leave Egypt lock, stock, and barrel, a complete severing with no compromise. Remember that Egypt represents sin, and he calls us to leave our sin in the same way. Pharaoh responded with mere lip service, but no repentance. Do you do that? God said he would perform one more sign, that being the death of every firstborn in Egypt, including man and cattle. The Israelites asked their neighbors for silver and gold. God had given the people favor in sight of the Egyptians, and Moses was greatly esteemed among the Egyptians. Wow. Pharaoh didn't seem to get it, but the servants and people were starting to get it. God's power and authority are obvious. Do you get it? Matthew 15, 21 through 39, a Gentile woman approached Jesus and was willing to accept her place, a dog or pet eating the crumbs off the table. Are we willing to accept our place? Jesus had indeed come as the King of the Jews, and it was his will that the Jews be a light to the world. But for now, and this begins this transition, he has taken a Gentile bride. That's us. Israel will figure it out in the future. Next, the disciples struggled with how they were going to feed such a big crowd. Apparently, they had not learned a great deal from the previous similar experience. I wonder if we're like that. Jesus Christ proved himself faithful. He always does, in his way, his will, his timing. Has he shown you that you can trust him? Well, then go ahead and trust him in the next opportunity he gives you to do so.